I did. Okay. All right. We'll go ahead and get started. It's already getting late, so I guess anybody else that comes will have to kind of straggle in late. So, but good morning. So it's good to see everybody. So we're continuing today in Exodus 17. And so this will be part 17 of the life of Moses. So we're going to start picking up some speed on some of these events and stuff, and getting through things and whatever. But this was one that I thought was really kind of interesting, this chapter here. And so we're gonna take the time today to go through this chapter in kind of in depth, and so see what we can draw from it. So let's go to Lord in prayer. Father God, we thank you and we praise you that we can be here this morning, Lord. Father, just ask you to bless this time together, Lord. Help us to learn something we might not have ever known before. Help us to understand your word better. Help us to be able to apply it to our lives in a very powerful way, Lord. Father, I just ask now that you just be with us during this time, Lord. And Father, I thank you and I praise you and I ask you speak to me in a powerful way. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. All right. So last week we talked about, in Exodus 16, we talked about how God was, we did 15 and 16 last week, where they talked about that as soon as they got through the Red Sea, that they started praising God, giving him the glory for what he had done, how he had accomplished them, and sang worship songs, praise songs to him, and stuff. And then they traveled on and got to a place where there was no water, and they're out in the desert and stuff. And I know I don't like when my mouth gets dry, but still, they got to a place where there was no water, and the only water they could find was bitter. And so they complained. They complained against God. They complained against Moses. Woe is us. Why you bring us out here to die? Why didn't you just leave us in Egypt, and where we had what we needed, and water, and we were getting beaten and abused and treated horribly, but that would have been better than dying out here in the wilderness. I mean, that was kind of the attitude and mentality that they had. And so they God tells Moses to throw this tree, or part of this tree, into the water, and it became sweet. So God provided for them again, even though they were complaining. Okay, and then we see it talks about the manna. We're all familiar with the manna from heaven, bread from heaven, how God provided it. But he was trying to teach them to trust him and to not go out and collect more than they actually needed for one day's supply, except for the Sabbath day, to collect 2 days' supply that day. But only take what they needed, and to trust God to provide for them. And if they didn't, and they went and took extra, it would get disgusting and gross and have maggots and all that stuff in it. So it would be no good. And so God was trying to teach them to trust him, and that he would provide for them, and to trust him. And this is a lesson that they have a hard time understanding. And I think sometimes we have a hard time understanding that. We have a hard time accepting that God's going to provide for us and take care of us and stuff. And so we're going to see that some more today, in chapter 17. Okay? And so you want to read 1 through 7 for me?
Okay. Then the congregation of the children of Israel set out on their journey from the wilderness of Sin, according to the commandment of the Lord, and camped in Rephidim, for there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore the people contended with Moses and said, Give us water that we may drink. So Moses said to them, Why do you contend with me? Why do you tempt the Lord? And the people thirsted there for water, and the people complained against Moses and said, Why is it that you have brought us up out of Egypt to kill us, and our children and our livestock with thirst? So Moses cried out to the Lord, saying, What shall I do with the people? They are almost ready to stone me. And the Lord said to Moses, Go on before the people, and take with you some of the elders of Israel. Also take in your hand your rod with which you struck the river, and go. Behold, I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb, and you shall strike the rock, and the water will come out of it, and that the people may drink. And Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. So he called the name of the place Massah, Meribah, because of the contention of the children of Israel, and because they tempted the Lord, saying, Is the Lord among us or not?
All right.
They won't be
That's right. They won't be happy. Okay? Because they have a struggle in their life.
Exactly.
And now, before we go cracking on them too much,
That's
We there too.
we there too, right? You know, a little struggle, and it could be a big struggle. I mean, thirsting to death or whatever. But I think they're being just a tiny bit dramatical here. You know,
I can get dramatical when I'm not dry too.
you know, again, I don't like, but I don't like having my mouth dry, so I got a medicine that makes my mouth dry, so I'm drinking a lot and stuff like that, and here I am, I got a bottle of water right here, because, hey, and so we see that they're again, they go back to the old thing. Why'd you bring us out here to kill us? Why didn't you just leave us in Egypt so we could have stayed there where we were provided for and everything? So, and basically they want somebody to provide for them. It was the Egyptians, and they were willing to take whatever cruel treatment they got from the Egyptians as long as the Egyptians provided food and water for them and their basic needs or whatever. Okay, and then, and stuff, and now they want Moses to just, here, give us some water, get us some water. And again, you're out in the desert, you really can't, it's hard to find water. You're not going to be able to just go, dig a well and find it probably. So I get part of that, but it's, wouldn't you think that after you had watched God bring you through the Red Sea on dry ground and deliver you from the Egyptians, and you gave praise to him in chapter 15, and then in 16 he provided water, changed the bitter water to good water, and provided it for you, and he's been providing food for you every day, albeit maybe so bland, but still, food. Prime rib could get bland after you eat it every day, So I mean, it's, the best in the world could be, you can get bland and stuff, especially with the way human nature is, and that we get tired of stuff we don't. Sometimes we don't appreciate as much things the way we should, as much as we should. And so, what's that?
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So, and so, we have that, and we do that, and so, but they're not. God is trying to show them to trust Him. He's leading them. Okay. We talked about the pillar of fire that was leading them by night, and the cloud by day when they were coming out of Egypt to the Red Sea. Well, that's still the pathway that they're going is they're still following that cloud and that fire, and they're being taken care of. And so why are you questioning? How much more do you got to have God do before you accept that He's going to provide for you?
I don't think when they said they'd rather go back
Yeah.
and be mistreated, I really don't think they took that into consideration.
No, I don't either.
I mean, I wouldn't want to go back being mistreated.
Right? No, definitely not.
It sounds like they've got out of that situation, but now they're expecting everything to be handed to them. Like they don't even have to go work for it anymore. Bring me water, bring me food. Go out here and work for it.
Yeah. you know. And I know that they were mistreated and stuff and everything, and that is the only one point that I made in the last couple of weeks is that was the only life that they ever knew. They were in Egypt in bondage for some 400 years. So they were born into this bondage. They were born into this slavery. They didn't know anything else. They didn't know what to do. You know, I mean, they knew how to work, but they didn't know, you know. And so I'm sure that's part of it too, is that they're probably maybe a little scared because they don't know.
Nobody leads them, telling them, do this, do that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I can see
Because
that.
they weren't allowed to make decisions on their own because they were slaves. They were in slavery. They had slave masters that took it, took care of them in a way, but also mistreated them in other ways and stuff. And so, and so they're wanting somebody to do that and to make it clear and obvious or whatever. And they probably in some way feel like, look, we've suffered enough. Why are we having to deal with no water out here in the desert? And so, like I said, again, I get it. I do get it because I can't stand when my mouth's dry. It's just, but Moses asked him. He says, "Why are you contending with me, and why are you tempting God?" Okay. One translation says, "Why are you testing God?" Okay. And in Psalm 95. The writer of that psalm talks about this instance, and he says, "You should not test God. Don't test God. Don't be, trying God." And again in Hebrews 3:7-19, same thing. That writer talks about don't be testing God. Right? The only time that we see where God says to put him to the test is he says in Malachi, he says, "Test me on this and." See and, give when it's hard to give and, trust me. Again, that's a trust issue. God's asking them to trust him. And he says, give when it's hard, when you don't have a lot, give. And whatever the case being, whether it's money or it's your time or it's whatever, but just give. Willingly open your heart and give and be generous in that way. And see, as God says, see if I don't open the gates of heaven, the storehouses of heaven, and flood you with blessing. I know a lot of people take that purely financial and talk about, you get a lot of, I've heard that talked about. I was in a church at one point in my life, because I've been in all kinds of different churches throughout my adult life. And I was in one that was more charismatic, and every day they said, every time that they collected offering, they said that verse, and they said, you need to give so that God gives back to you, pressed down, shaken, and all that other stuff, as it says in Malachi and stuff. But that's not all that is. It's not just a financial thing. They're trying to say you give to God, and then God's going to give you so much more that you'll be rich and lucrative and all this other. No, that's not the case. Okay. And, God gives us based on what we do with it. And that's the reason for the parable of the talents. Some of them were given 2 talents. Some of them were given 5. Some of them were given 10. And it says right in there, based on their ability. And so if you aren't good with, we'll continue on the money theme. If you're not good with money, then you're going to struggle with money, because God's not going to allow you to have $10 million if you can't keep track of $1,000 and do good with $1,000 and help people with a portion of that $1,000 or whatever. Okay. If you're not good with it, then he's not going to give you a lot more, which could explain why I have never seen a huge amount of money in my lifetime, so, but I'm trying to do, but I do pretty good, and I do try to help people and things like that. But God does that. That's not the case. But and it needs to be more than just financial. It needs to be our time, our how much we help other people, how much we do, and everything. I mean, and so and our willingness, our heart, are we willing to put ourselves out there to help others? Are we willing to do, things to make a difference in somebody's life? And so, and that's what he's, and here, here these guys they're kind of waiting on God to, or on Moses. They're looking to Moses is what they're looking to, because they're seeing Moses doing all these acts with that rod and that everything and stuff, and he still continues to do that, but he's not the one doing them. God's the one doing them through him.
That's why I say when you give money for something, you ought to be thankful for being able.
Exactly. Right. Yep. Exactly. Be thankful for that you can give that. And exactly. So, I mean, and they just, and I get that they're kind of dependent and stuff like that or whatever, but God's providing for them. God's giving them food. God, they got water here back. No, it doesn't appear that they are. And as soon as they run out of water again, they start belly aching, complaining, and just carrying on, And so, and we need to be careful in our lives about falling into that trap, because, and I know I've had times where I've been complaining and carrying on and not grateful for things and stuff. And so I'm trying to learn to do better, to trust God. I mean, I trust God. I really do with a lot of things. And do I trust God with everything? I need to be better about that. I'll freely admit that. But, but I do trust God. I know that
you have to trust yourself.
Yeah. So, exactly. And then, and so we need to see that, and we need to know that. Okay. So Moses followed God's command. He trusted God. He knew that God was going to provide for him in a way. So he went and asked God. He said, "What do I do with these people? They're already wearing them out, and they just got into the desert." So, and this trip that should have only taken a few months took 40 years. And we're going to see again. That's another instance where they didn't trust God enough to do what they were supposed to do. So we need to trust God, but also we need to follow what he wants us to do. And Moses is following him. So, because he's saying, go to this rock and and take some elders with you and go to this rock, smack the rock with your rod, and I'm going to make a waterfall. I'm going to split the rock and make a waterfall out of it. And God does that. And so he does. He goes and he does it. He strikes the rock. Water comes out. So we see that. And so Moses doesn't seem to have a problem trusting God anymore. And we saw through the plagues and the other stuff that he questioned God a lot. And he was, even when God was calling him to go do this, he was just like, no, God, you got the wrong guy. You got the wrong guy. Okay. Again, I'm not going to talk about arguing with God, because I've done more than my fair share of that in my lifetime. But I'm trying to learn to not do that and stuff, and to just trust the Lord. And that's a lot of what all this is trusting God. All right. So then we see now they've got water, so they should be happy. Okay? Now should be happy. They've got food, they've got water. Okay, what you complaining about now? So now we're going to see where it gets into a problem. Okay, so 8 through 16, please.
Now Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose us some men and go out, fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. And so it was, when Moses held up his hand, that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands became heavy, So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. And Aaron and Hur supported his hands, one on one side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. So Joshua defeated Amalek and his people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this for memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under the heaven." Moses built an altar and called its name, "The Lord is my banner." For he said, "Because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation."
Okay. All right. So now they got their first battle, basically. God had led them away from the Philistines at one point, and when they first came out of Egypt, so that way there they would not come under attack. But now Amalek's come out to attack them. Okay, and Amalek, or the descendants of Amalek, the Amaleks, whatever. But Amalek was a grandson of Esau. Now, these guys are descendants of Jacob, so the people of Amalek are descendants of Esau. They're cousins. They're cousins. But they don't care about that. Amalek, the people of Amalek don't care that these are their cousins. They want to wipe them out. Okay? And because of that, God promises that he's going to wipe them out. Okay? They won the battle this day because Moses kept putting his hands up with the rod, and if you let his hands down because they got tired, they'd start losing the battle. So the battle was hinging on a lot on Moses and his ability to keep his hands up, and we see a lot of people now in churches and stuff. They put their hands up during worship and things like that as a sign of offering praise to God and worship to God in that way, and that He will take care of you. You want them. You're asking God to come and to fill you and to take care of you and to give. And you're giving your praise. You're giving your surrender. There's a lot of what that is. Okay, he's the leader of this people is surrendering to God by keeping his hands up and stuff. And so we see this, okay? And it got to the point where they ended up having Moses sit on a rock, and Aaron on one side and Hur on the other side were keeping his hands up because he couldn't physically do it anymore, and they didn't want to lose the battle because of that. Okay? And so, but they're trusting God for it. They figured out and they saw what was going on. Now, what if you're not Aaron? What if you're Joshua and Moses says, "Go take some men, go down there, get into battle. I'm going to go stand on this hill and watch." What you think of that idea? I'm thinking I might be like, I'm not so sure that's a really good idea, but but then again, we do see that in the way that we wage war and stuff like that, our generals and our people are off. They're not at the front lines of the battlefield doing that, involved in the war and things like that. Okay, they're off making decisions for giving orders. You got some officers that are there right near the front lines that are taking and making, based on what's happening in the moment, they're making decisions. But a lot of the big people would be like Moses here. They're off in this, and stuff. So they're not completely there, and I remember a line from the Patriot movie, that Mel Gibson did or whatever, where the British commanding officer says, stop shooting our officers, stop targeting our officers, because if we have armies that don't have officers, it's going to be chaos and everything. But he was, and Mel's character replied, well, as long as your officers are going to be targeting civilians, I'm going to target the officers. So, I get that too. So,
Yeah.
but so anyway, so we see that they're we know that this is a battle. This is what they need to do, and Moses is doing his part based on what God has shown him. And so again, it's trusting. Okay. So Dr. Tony Evans points out that basically what Moses is doing here is that this is like a form of intercessory prayer. Spiritual battle is what he's doing here, because he's up on the hill and he's intercessing, praying or intercessing and raising his hands, showing submission to God and for the battle and everything and stuff. And so he points out that this is spiritual warfare, and there's a battle going on, but there's also spiritual warfare going on. And we've heard a lot of talk about that here in the last month or so because of what happened with that assassination a month ago, that a lot of people are saying that this is becoming a spiritual warfare thing, that this is a spiritual battle, because he was very vocal about his belief and his faith in Christianity and God and everything. And so but he's and it depending on how we react, we're either going to step up and start being more bold and proclaiming more or we're going to just kind of shell up and fear up and not do it no more, and totally just be quiet and not allow us and stuff. And that's, God doesn't want us to be quiet. He's called all of us to go forth and to talk about God and to make disciples and to teach people about God's ways and everything. And so, this is a form of spiritual battle here. God, he's up on the hill praying and intercessing for the battle going on below. And so, and he's making a spiritual connection with heaven on behalf of the battle going on down there. Okay? And so, do you think Danny makes spiritual connections with heaven on behalf of us?
I hope so.
Exactly.
So, I mean, I would, yes, I know just in talks that I've had with Danny about different things and whatever, I know he does, because he has a heart for the people of this church and wanting to.
Trust him.
Yeah, exactly. We do have trust in him. Okay. And that could be how Joshua was. Okay, I'll go fight your battle. You go stand up there and watch. Okay, I trust you, Moses. I trust you. Okay. So, and Joshua could be, I trust you and I trust God. I trust that God's gonna do this. He's gonna come through for us in this battle. Okay. And that's, so we have times in our lives where things get hard and things happen and everything, and so we need to be trusting God. But we also know that we do have somebody praying for us. Now we can call him and talk to him about what's going on and ask him to pray for us, certain things or whatever stuff. But even more so than that, I think that he prays. I know I pray for people in the church when God puts them on my heart and wants them. And that's the way we should be doing it. If God places somebody on your heart, or somebody comes to mind or on your heart or whatever, and whether you think they're, whether you think they're having no issues at all, pray for them. Say a prayer for them. That's how we should all be doing. We should all be in that.
have our issues.
We do. We all have our issues. Exactly. Okay. So, and stuff. And so, like I say in your notes here, Paul, in the New Testament, Paul's telling us Paul's praying for the new believers, and he's telling us to pray for, pray continuously for others, and to be praying for our brethren, to be praying for those, and not just in authority over us or leading us or whatever, but just our fellow brothers and sisters. We should be praying for them. And so, all right, and then God promises Moses that the people of Amalek will be wiped out. And it doesn't happen here, and it doesn't happen for quite a while. Long time. God, at one point, tells King Saul, wipe them out. You're going into battle against them. They keep coming and fighting against you guys. It's time to take them out. I promised that they would be wiped out. Take them out. Kill them all. Well, Saul didn't do it. Saul was disobedient. That was part of the reason why God took his throne, his reign away from him. Okay? And Samuel ended up going out and killing them and wiping them out. But they eventually got wiped out. All right, and so we, God kept his promise. And God keeps his promises. Okay? God promises that, you're going to be taken care of, or that you got something going on in your life, or you got a battle that you're going against, and some sickness or whatever, and God says, yep, that's going to be taken care of, and you're not going to have to worry about that anymore. Then trust that. Trust that. Know that. That's yours. So, I was going to say, a mother knows the scream of her own kid.
She looks back, I figured she's heard that before.
Determining if I go through the walls to go get them.
Yeah, no. So, but yeah, so, all right. And so he says, he builds an altar, and the name is the Lord is my banner. Okay? So, okay, what does a banner do? What does a banner do? Okay. All right.
Like besides the banner at like a football game or
Yeah, like it tells you of
Mhm.
being, this is happening at this time.
Advertising.
Yeah,
Exactly.
there you go.
Advertises something, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Basically, kind of the same concept here. Okay.
Yeah.
The Lord is my banner because He's showing me. He's first of all, He's promised me, and so the Lord is my banner. So do you? Okay, it's sports, like you said, sports. Okay, it's Tony Evans. When I was reading the commentary about this, he kind of used that analogy. Okay, if you go to a sporting event, do you not wear the clothes and the hats and maybe even carry a flag or a banner or something, have it on your car or have it with you or whatever and stuff like that? Okay, and so basically what Moses is doing here is Moses is making it known that they are following the Lord. And that God is, and he's making this altar and everything, and saying that the Lord is my banner. He's the one I support. He's the one I got the T-shirt for.
There you go.
He's the one I got the hat. And I don't just wear.
Maps and the license plate and the steering wheel cover.
Yep, right. Yeah.
Yep.
All that stuff, yeah. So, but she won't even get in that vehicle because there's so much stuff in there.
I'm not getting in it.
So, but unless she needs something, then because it's a truck, if she needs to use the truck, then she'll compromise her principles to get in it. So, but yeah. So I mean, it's we should be. So does our life advertise? Because we all support something. We all have a banner for something. Okay, we all, one way or the other, we are endorsing something with our lives. And so, is it apparent to people? I mean, you ain't gotta be wearing a T-shirt and a necklace and the all that stuff and everything, but just in the way our lives, we live our lives, are we displaying that our banner, we are carrying the banner of God? That should be what we're doing, and that's basically what he's doing here. Is he's making it known to whoever sees this and knows this, that this is that God has done powerful things for them, and that they are with God, that they are supporting God. And it doesn't mean that you're going to be that way all the time, because we can be totally on board with God and supporting God and carrying that banner or whatever. And then there are times where we slip and we don't do right. And we got to get back to it, and we got to get back on it, you know. As far as sports go, it's, you know, I'm sometimes one of the hardest critics of my team. You know, when they're not going to do good, they stink. Yeah, you know. So
And I love, not just you, because I'm so much. I love how we can sit on the couch and judge what they're doing is wrong and what they should be doing, and we couldn't do the first thing.
Yeah.
Kind of like the people with God, you know, they just grumbling.
Mm-hmm.
But he is doing stuff, and they certainly can't do what he's doing. So,
yeah,
you know,
exactly. So they're
we grumble about it all day long, whether we can do something about it or not. That's the human nature.
Yeah.
That's what we got to learn not to do.
right, exactly. So, but okay, and so we see that God provides for them in these two instances. He gives them water again, and get it from a rock. I mean, so that's kind of another unique way that he does this and stuff. And then and you know, we are also cautioned to not test God. Do not tempt the Lord. Right? And so we need to, and again, this is all about trust. They have to learn to trust God. And until they do, they're going to be wandering in the wilderness and continuing to struggle with the same things over and over and over again. They're going to continue to struggle to find water. But sometimes they don't get it and stuff. And so but then then we see that God leads them into battle, and battle goes well and everything, because everybody's doing their part. The men are down there fighting. Moses and Aaron and Hur are up there trying to encourage and providing intercessory for them and everything, and helping, you know, trying to help them and lead them in the right way by trusting God, and God delivers them. And then Moses goes and gives the credit to the Lord. And so, and do we do that? Do we give the credit to God when he's done something? Even if it might seem minor, do we thank him for the rain?
Not as much as we should.
Right.
Especially if you're praying for something particular, and the outcome does happen the way you wanted it to happen. We forget that, you know, we'll go to God in a minute to ask for something, but we do often forget to thank him.
Yep. So, and the end result might be there, but it might be done in a way that we weren't expecting. Like, I know they weren't expecting Moses to go up and hit a rock, and then guys are coming out of it, you know? I mean, so, you know, God works in all these different ways, and then a lot of times we get it set in our mind how it should be, and we don't do well with it. We just, oh, nope, we're not, you know, so, and stuff. So, but yeah. All right, so we got to wrap it up. It's 10:45. Questions, thoughts, comments?